Welcome to the Radical Responsibility Revolution podcast. This is where we are transforming lives, inspiring you to reclaim your health, your wealth, and the power of your mind. Here we share actionable insights, inviting you to turn inwards and design your life of purpose and abundance. Welcome back to another episode of Radical Responsibility Revolution 2026. I am so excited about today's guest because she is one of those women who makes you go, "Oh, you've been awake for a long time," because some of us are not that way. You know who I'm talking about. The women who have been having these existential conversations, one of my favorite words, with themselves while the rest of us are still figuring out how to survive family dinners. All of it's important. But Robyn McTeague is a woman who learned responsibility very early and a little too early, but she's going to tell us about that. Life handed her more than a child should ever have to carry. And like so many wise women, she didn't just survive it. She alchemized it, which is another one of my favorite words. We're talking about the difference between carrying responsibility and choosing responsibility, between being the strong one and being the sovereign, independent one. Robyn's path has taken her through corporate systems, unions, conflict resolution, cancer, spiritual awakenings, energy healing, numerology, the Enneagram, motivational mapping, and oh my gosh, can you believe that? All in one person? Probably things I didn't even say here. But we're moments away from learning about this magical woman. And somewhere in the middle of all of that, her soul blurted out, "You're going to be a healer." And those are usually the best career pivots that we ever experience and we share on this podcast. This conversation is about awareness, pattern breaking, and what happens when women stop outsourcing their authority and start choosing their lives on purpose. You know how I love that, on purpose. If you've ever felt like you've been responsible for everyone but yourself, or midlife cracked you open instead of shutting you down, you're going to feel so at home with Robyn because she's got some magical stories to tell us. So, welcome, Robyn. I am so excited to have you here. And I always start out by asking my guests, who is Robyn today? Who is she showing up as? And how are you serving this beautiful thing called the world?
And thank you so much for having me. I'm looking forward to our conversation today. And so today I'm really stepping into more visibility than ever. I did a Blue Talk last year that's coming out this week and became an international speaker. I really enjoy sharing stories and helping people shift in their perspective, because it's all perspective. And that's why I brand it as a life of choice, because our personality and our past doesn't have to define us. So I really love to help women, especially entrepreneurs, small business owners, working with small teams to help them understand, why is it that I do what I do? And how can I see the patterns? Everything is patterns.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
when we can see those patterns for what they are and have the awareness, that's the first step. And, most people think they're aware, and the studies show that we aren't. And it's the same with the motivational mapping I do. I have people guess what are their top three and what are their bottom ones. Less than 20% can correctly estimate them and in the right order. So one of the things we like to say, which I love to talk about too, is making the invisible visible. And
Mm.
there's so much going on. And so I really, that's where my heart is, to helping people have that fresh perspective, really feeling like they're living a choice rather than just that day to day, just let me get through it and I have no energy, because motivation is energy. So it's really all about bringing energy into our life, knowing what fuels me and what saps my energy so that I can have the life I want, because it's kind of boring if we're just, stuck in the mindset that I just need to get through today. Sometimes That is, we have ups and downs. I'm not discounting that. I think we have to, one thing we don't learn for ourselves that we give to others is kindness and compassion. So that's a key piece
Oh,
of
absolutely.
everything that
Yeah.
I bring in, and bringing that gentleness and kindness into the work, because I think so often there's a harshness that we take on, and leaders think that's the way to do it because they think it
Hmm.
gets things done, but underneath people are are not happy.
No, absolutely not. There's so much to unpack there. And I want to start out just by the idea of choice, because you've said that uh, a couple of times, and that is where you're leaning into. And so I want to explore this idea of choice for just a moment, because the concept of choice, especially in the Western Hemisphere, we're under this delusion, honestly, I think that's what I want to call it, is that we have choice, right? We can make our own choices. And yet, the truth is, we aren't making our own choices, as you said, because we're under a pattern, a habitual pattern that makes those choices for us, the subconscious and all the things that you can share with the audience. I want to explore with you and uncover for people so they understand that choice isn't just getting up in the morning and plodding out to the kitchen and hitting the coffee maker and doing the same thing over and over. Even though you think you're making a choice, it's not a conscious choice. It's
Mhm.
a habitual choice. So talk about choice for a second, because that is what you lean into. And then we'll go into some of the ways we can uncover our patterns.
Yeah, and we don't think we have choice in many situations. And it's because fears come up in different things from our past. And, that's the way I felt working in a job. I wanted the security. I found a job that gave me the security. And then as I started to shift, then I was making different choices. And we forget that it's the little choices that we make along the way instead of just the
Mhm.
big ones. Who am I going to live life with? Where am I going to work? Those are big choices. And we forget that we can choose again.
Yeah.
And, that got me stuck in my life in a bad marriage, for example. And I had a hard time seeing a different way out. But it's like, we do make those choices, and it's the simple things too that rewire our brains. So maybe I get up on the other side of the bed today, or I go for a walk before my coffee or for me tea. These are small different things that we do that help our neural pathways and our brain rewire to say and recognize that I am making a choice. So when we're looking at something, like even taking a course, something simple like that. Do I sign up for this? This is kind of the beginning of the year where we're looking at, I have this whole year ahead of me, and we fill it up because part of us wants to fill those gaps. What if I actually left some space to make some choice along the way? You
Love
know,
the gaps.
it's a totally different way of looking at it.
Yeah.
And we're multi-level beings. So we're spiritual, physical, mental, and emotional. So what if I looked at some of those other choices in that way, feeling
Mhm.
into it? So often we shut that part of us down. We are such thinkers in the Western world where everything is about the thinking and, the to-do lists
Mhm.
and the pros and cons. But how am I going to feel about that? What's it going to give me? Do I have the resources, the capacity? Like there's lots of different ways we can look at it. So when we have a way to open up that way of thinking and to see we have choice, one of the books I always recommend is Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl.
Oh God, I
And
love Viktor Frankl.
yeah,
Yeah.
like he came up with logotherapy after being in a concentration camp
Hmm.
because he said, they couldn't break my mind. That's the one thing
Exactly.
that
Hmm.
I had choice about. So even someone in that situation saying, I could think about my family, I could reimagine the beautiful trees that I was around. Our mind is so powerful, but only if
Oh,
we
so.
use it in a way that supports us, because it can be our worst enemy and our harshest critic.
Yeah. I love the brain. The brain, and when you talk about neural pathways, something as simple as I have a trash can under my desk, right? If I take that trash can and I move it from the right side to the left side, those neural pathways are so ingrained that for the first few weeks, I will continue to throw the trash to the right until all of a sudden I go, aha. So it's these simple choices, as you said, we are completely in control. We have the power, the agency over our mind and over those neural pathways. So, what is one simple thing that somebody could do? Because it's the beginning of the year and everybody wants to have a resolution, is maybe an intention that somebody could begin down this pathway. Do you have something on your website they could say, oh, I want to start this process with Robyn? How could I look into this simple thing that I'm doing that I could shift just one neural pathway, moving a trash can, having tea instead of coffee, something simple that they could begin, because I'm always about taking sacred action. We make the decision, but then we have to back it up with movement. So what's something that you might be able to offer them that could bring them to a place that just is simple and get them started?
Yeah, one of the things I believe, and the science shows, is that the one thing we do have capacity over is our breath. And I use a three-centered practice along with the meditational work I also teach. And I do have a relationship meditation on the website that makes you walk through different parts of looking at relationships kind of in a different way. But one of the things I like to say is, when you are in those places where you're feeling triggered, the first thing is to notice. And then can you take that pause and notice, where are my feet right now, to bring you present, and take that breath and see, do I want to react that way or not? People are really surprised when I trained in conflict resolution, talking to people about how we have that capacity, that little space that we can create to create more space, especially with anger, right? We're not good with anger. Yeah, it's one of my big challenges, and that's why one of the reasons I train in conflict resolution, because of being that passive aggressive from my upbringing. But there's this place of taking that breath, and it's like I can consciously now choose to react or be curious.
Yeah, yeah.
And
My
so
favorite word,
yeah,
curiosity. Hmm.
if you do a word for the year, maybe curiosity is one
Yeah.
of.
Yeah, I would, I'm all down with that because it really truly is. It's the reaction is an automatic behavior that we put a neural pathway in. We've installed it. The curiosity is the observer that says, okay, can I see this in a different way? So what's your best guidance? I love the breath we take so for granted. It's the thing that keeps us alive, number one. But number two, it's also the simple things. I find it so fascinating that the human species wants to poo-poo the simple. The breath is so simple, but it is so profound. So, how does somebody get that's not practiced this, because you have been teaching conflict resolution and you have seen thousands of people go through this process in the messy way? What's your best suggestion for somebody that says, I can't catch myself before I go into my automatic response? How do I get curious? Even if I want to have this word curiosity as my word of the year, I still am not connecting with it. What is your best guidance just for that little bit?
We have to find something that's specific to us. So for some people, it's putting a sticky on your computer, or it could be a symbol. It could be putting a little thing on your wrist or your hand somewhere. If you work in an office, you can just put it there. If you're work from home, it's a little easier. You can have, like I have some different things on my wall that I look out at, and they're great reminders for me. So the other thing is to not be really hard on ourselves that, oh,
Mhm.
I messed up. And it's like we have to accept we're human. And we have the hardest time with that. And that's why I love the Enneagram, because it really helps us to see where we get stuck in those patterns and build that kindness and compassion to say, yeah, I'm human. It's like having a shower every day if I'm going to go out in the world, right? It's we forget ourselves over and over again. So it's a matter of remembering. And that takes time and some effort on our part, but we're worth it.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
so part of that is accepting that you are a beautiful soul, that, you are lovable, and this is a loving thing you're doing for yourself, and finding
Yeah.
visual, like we're, kinesthetic, we have these different ways of learning.
Mhm.
Is there a movement? I like to give clients coming up with an annual song for themselves.
Wow.
So find a song, no rap. I mean, it can have a few words, but it has to be really upbeat. There's
Mhm.
certain things that criteria that I give, but it's like having that song, and maybe you go back to the same one. Like I still love Don't Stop Believing.
Yeah.
Like I always come back. It's upbeat, and often I'll just play it before I'm going to do something to really get me in that frame of mind, and feel the body. And the
Mhm.
the main practice I do is that three-centered practice. Again, we have body, heart, and head as the three
Mhm.
intelligence centers that we talk
Mhm.
about with the Enneagram work. And we tend to prefer one over the other. So starting with something that you prefer, or is it a heart-centered message? Maybe it's a beautiful heart that you draw or something. If you want that visual too, maybe you journal, you put a heart every day. So finding
Mhm.
something specific to you, because so
Right.
many of these habit things are just follow this thing. And we don't follow it
Right.
because it doesn't resonate with us. We have to
Right.
find something that we will do ourselves. And it's the
Mhm.
same when I teach meditation. I love the one I do, it's amazing. And the one that you will do is the best one for you.
Mhm. Mhm.
And then, if you can, if you're willing to do that three-centered practice,
Yeah.
and has made such a difference in the way I look at things and the way I choose differently rather than that kind of grasping kind of way. It's like a
Yeah.
more relaxed way to how are things going within me, and what is it
Right.
that I really want? Is this a specific need that I didn't get met that I
Yeah.
think is going to save me from
Mhm.
something I don't want to feel? Or like what's really going on? So that curiosity starts with ourselves. So if you
Yeah.
can start that morning with some curiosity just with yourself of what's going on with you.
Yeah. So, so many things in there. Number one, the anchor. That's what we call it in NLP. So having the heart or having something that we connect with, that anchor is so important because as you said, it's like, oh, I'm going to start a new habit. Why? There's no feeling, there's no sense of why behind it. So I love that. That's so brilliant. The song it reminded me, I don't know if you've ever heard of the African parable that when a child is conceived and then they choose the song for the child, they sing it while it's in the womb, and then the child comes out and they sing the song to the child. The tribe does. Oh, it gives me goosebumps every time I tell this story because they sing it to the child throughout its life when it's going through the happiest times, when it does something not appropriate. But it's always that song that brings it back together. So I think music is a beautiful connection for us. So I hope everybody will listen to this and actually even pick something because it's always about the sacred action that you're taking. So you're giving some beautiful gems. If somebody would just pick out one of them, because you don't have to do the whole kit and caboodle, but those are beautiful. An anchor, a song, and now it leads me into this Enneagram because I love the Enneagram. I think it's beautiful. And there's plenty of people that are listening to this that don't even know what we're talking about. Like they're saying some funny word. So let's talk about what that is. So I'm a I'm an 8 and a 4. So I got like I was like,
Well, we do
what
have
do
there.
you have?
Yeah, and it's a psycho-spiritual tool. So
Yeah.
we can talk about it from many different angles. For some people, it's more the spiritual, for some, it's more the science or the personality. So that's what I love about it. It's very flexible as to how you work with it, and there's a lot of depth. Like there is no end of learning with it. And but it's also is practical. I only love practical tools that I can use that are going to give me transformation. And this is a map and a way to shift things in our life. So we have lines that we move towards and challenges. So it gives us a whole breadth and depth of what
So I
that,
want to stop you for 1 second because well, on my screen, it's just to the right of you.
yeah.
Is
So
that little
that's the
circle?
symbol here.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
there's
So
three.
yeah, but I want people to get kind of a visual because some
Oh,
people are
okay.
like, well, what is she talking about? And I
Yeah.
don't mean for the purposes of you explaining it, but that it is very, I want to say it's geometry, it's math, it's science. Those are all, they're the same
Yeah.
wheelhouse, right? There is a science foundation for it. But as far as I'm concerned, science is spirituality. They're the same coin, anyways. So I just wanted to kind of bring a visual for people. So continue because you're talking and I'm like, I'm looking at this, the circle
Yeah.
going, that's what it is. That's what it is.
So
And
there's
it's
three.
got some symbology to it. So
Yeah, so there's three laws that we talk
yeah,
about with it within the symbol. So there's the circle for unity, there's
yeah.
the triangle, and this gets us to how change occurs. How, with the law of three, there is we learn to hold two things that seem the opposite, and out of that comes something else. And that's the constant change that we're moving through. And then there's a hexad, and that's the lines of growth. And so we have bits of all of them within us, and then we have that main starting point that gives us our most direct growth path. And often I see people can be mistyped because they do a test online and it doesn't really get to why we do things. It's more about what we do. But we all have the
Mhm.
same behaviors. We all get angry. We all get sad. We have these challenges, but it's what's going underneath that. And a lot of these
Mhm.
tests can't get to that. And so if you're on a growth path with your type and nothing is changing, because it's not about putting you in that box, it's about getting you out of the box and into the growth beyond what those kind of um, maps are with the
Right.
different challenges that we have. And as we learn to have more ability to step back and see the personality, see the ego defense mechanisms for what they are, and see us do those habits again and bring in that kindness and compassion, we start to have more and more distance from it. So we see it. It's
Mhm.
not like it's going to go away, it's part of us,
Right.
but we have a
Right.
different way of being with it and being kind to ourselves and saying, yeah, I did it again. And, but I do it less and I have
Right.
uh, so less frequency, more distance. I see it more often. And that's what happens with patterns and why we loosen them and they
Yeah.
eventually they don't hold us so strongly anymore.
Right. Right. So just to put it in a little nutshell of how this is for so people understand it maybe in a way that they can um, experience it in something else. So there's all the Myers-Briggs and there's the human design, and I've done personality things on leadership trainings. But all of those things, right? Any of those, including the Enneagram, gives you sort of a starting point. And this is much deeper. And at the same time, it doesn't mean we are that person and we can never change, as you just said. It's about there's some ways that these learnings show up for us that we can go into a darker version of ourselves or we can go into a lighter version. And honestly, dark and light are not bad or good. They're just how we express. So you do other things besides the Enneagram as well.
Hmm.
So you have sort of a compilation, if you will, of bringing all of these modalities together to just give us a mirror. That's all this is. All of these things, they're just mirrors so that we can become curious as we're looking in this mirror. watching and observing ourselves in a way that allows us to be more authentically ourselves, to be our soul selves. So tell us about how you blend some of those modalities.
Yeah, I start with the motivational map because it's a very simple assessment, but again, has a lot of tool within it to give us transformation to really energize us. So it helps us to see it's like a 12 to 15-minute online assessment. And then I do a debrief and we look at what are your top three motivators, which give us 60 to 70% of our energy. And then our bottom one, which can be a blind spot for us. So it's ways that we dismiss other people without even realizing it.
Mhm.
Like when I worked in a corporate setting, my lunchtime was for my fitness. I was teaching meditation on the side. So I didn't have time for a lot of social things. I'd go to the Christmas
Mhm.
parties and things like that. But if
Mhm.
people wanted to have coffee and stuff, I wasn't so readily available. And after a
Mhm.
while, it would feel almost like they were too clingy for me. And what I realized was we have relationship, we have achievement, and we have growth motivators. And a lot of the entrepreneurs are the high growth, right? What's next? What's next? The
Right,
FOMO
right.
without the achievement,
Yes.
the relationship stuff missing.
Yes.
So
Yes.
moving into an entrepreneurship, realizing it's all about relationship, I had to shift that, but it's not my
Right.
first go-to. I love
Yes.
people, I love relating, but to keep that constant contact, that's not front of mind. So it
Hmm.
gave me that information that I have to realize that's just what's important to others. Relationships take time. They need more information, they need more detail, and that kind of constant connection for the security part. Whereas the
Yep.
growth people just give me the bottom line and I'm off to the races, right?
I'm
So
sorry. I'm hearing you describe me, so that's why I'm laughing.
exactly, right? And we have a combination and we can have internal
Yep.
conflicts because of
Yep.
those.
Yep.
And we have conflicts with other people's or tensions, right? These potential
Hmm.
tensions.
Right.
So it gives them a huge insight into why they've been doing different things and why they maybe feel they're a one step forward and two back. And then the next layer is the Enneagram to go deeper into the personality and that deeper why. And then, depending on what comes up, we'll do some coaching, could be some inner child work, it could be because I'm also trained in counseling and psychology. So and then, if they have more of a spiritual bent, if they want to do the meditation course, because that has an energy healing component and the shielding, which was huge for me coming back to work after cancer and being around people again. So it really
Yeah.
depends on the individual. I'm so much about there is no cookie cutter approach. There is
Yes.
specific tools I use, but it really is where is the person at and what do they need? It's the same with a small business owner. What are the headaches in your business? I'm not just going to come in and do an assessment for sake of assessment unless you want a workshop to learn something.
Right.
But it's really about what do you need so these assessments and tools can work with you to help you find where the root of those challenges. And here are some tools and some ways that you can look at it differently and bring in more balance to that. So, for example, how open is your team to change? Is it too much or too low? We have that kind of sweet spot. Are people in the right roles? Do you have the right
Yep.
kind of motivations within that team? Again, depending on what is the makeup of that team for, what is the
Hmm.
role? It's not just, doing a test and this is right or wrong. It's like
Right.
having the context. Everything is context.
Yeah. And what I hear, because I believe that the planet vibration is becoming more feminine energy. Not that masculine is bad, but it's just been the predominant energy for the past 2000 years. And when you talk about business and you say it's not just a assessment, it's not just a cookie cutter, that has been the messaging that has been going out to business, corporate people that start businesses do this, know your numbers, do all the things, which none of that is inherently bad. But I love how you have framed this, that it is about what is your culture? What is your team? It starts with us, our version of the world. What is our motivational map? What is our Enneagram? How do we show up and participate in the world? And then we have to build a culture around that. And maybe we have team members that don't belong in our culture when we first come to meet you because we didn't know that. So I want to just explore this a little bit more of how on earth you went from being in this corporate culture of being a conflict resoluter, right? And these people were in that dynamic of that masculine construct that said everything is in a box. Like if it doesn't fit in this box, I can't work with it. I don't know how because no one has taught me to look inside. How did you go from that to then teaching meditation in some of these arenas that are still in that framework to now I'm going to lead you back to your story of being
Sure.
12. That's what I'm doing. But I
Yeah.
want you to just give the audience a sense of how did Robyn get to be who Robyn is today? Because you started out having that intuitive insight, then you had to do all these other detours and come to where you are today. So I want you to tell that story in your 7-minute version of it because I think it's brilliant. I'm like, I just have been waiting to get to this part.
Sure.
You start wherever you want. I know that was a big question, but I want you to tell the story in your own words.
Yeah. So, yeah, I came into a very challenged family. So my mom was suicidal, mentally ill. First time I remember her attempting suicide, I was 4. And so that was pretty scary because my brother and I had to go live with this woman. I didn't know who she was.
Mhm.
My dad was an alcoholic, a sexual abuser, physical abuser, rageaholic, and worked in the bush as a logger. So he wasn't around anyway. So it was kind of a little more peaceful when he wasn't.
Right.
But, he had the rage, and my mom just hid. So those were my ideas of what anger and how you deal with conflict. And then my mom and I left, and we lived with other families. We're on welfare. My brother came back to live with us after 8 years, and he was really angry and took it out on us. So things were not quiet in the household. And my mom decided when I was 15, she was moving to another town, and we had moved so much. And we were finally putting roots in this one town. I'd been there, I think, like 5 or 6 years. And it was like I was starting to make friends. I was in high school. And it was really the first time I stood up for myself and said, I'm not moving. And went to live with a foster family, which saved me. But
Wow.
just going back to that other part, I had those intuitive skills and that awareness piece. I remember at 12 saying to myself, why are some people aware and other people weren't?
Mhm.
And when my mom and I were separated for a year, when we had gone back to her parents, and I couldn't communicate with them because they didn't speak any English, they were Ukrainian. And so I went to live with my cousins for a year when she was in a hospital. And I was in grade 2. And I knew, but I didn't know, right? No one told me, but I had this
Right.
art project to do, and and I was a quiet kid. I was so shy, and I'd been bullied and everything else. And I said to the teacher, I need to do my art project this morning. And she said, why? We're doing it this afternoon. I just said, I want to do it. And she said, no. I went home at lunch because it was like tiny, tiny town. And my mom was there to take me away. No one told me that, but I knew it. And so I had this whole part of me that I had shut down. And when I moved down to go to university, so after I lived with that family, I went to a local college for my first year and then came down here in the Vancouver area to go to university. And I got into another really bad situation. It was like a room and board thing. The woman was alcoholic. So that same energetic pattern that I'd lived with all my life. And she threw me out, and I went to live with her son, who I didn't know was an addict. And there's a whole thing there. And then I met up with him again after we'd separated for a bit. And there was that turning point, that one of the big choices in my life. And he said, let's go do some drugs. And I turned around and I said no and walked away. And, I struggled through. I found some part-time work. I had to drop out of college, end up doing my degree at night over like 10 years because, no one had taught me how to balance earning a living because no one had earned a living. No one had even finished high school in my family, let alone go to university. So this was all new territory for me. Like even in grade 12, people were saying, what are you doing next year? And I said, I don't know. Like, what do you mean? Like it wasn't in my frame of reference, right? Because at that time, the counselors, oh, you want to be a teacher or a
Yeah.
stewardess, airline stewardess? Like, but my art
Right.
teacher was saying, you're so good at art. Do you want a career in art? And I thought, how can you make money in art? So all
Mhm.
these parts of me I shut down.
Yeah.
And to cope, like really stayed with the mental, my intellect saved me.
Yeah.
And so I stuffed all this down. And then I went into a bad marriage who had that same, maybe not a drinker, but it was that same anger issue that got buried and they weren't able to deal with it, so we'd have the blow ups. And it got so bad, and I felt so unable to step out of that. I
Mhm.
started to work on myself. We went to counseling. He was supposed to do anger management. And I started to work, did a group for sexual abuse, started to do more of the emotional work that I'd done a lot of intellectual, but I hadn't done the
Yeah.
emotional part. And so I grew over that 3 years, whereas he didn't do anything. It was a typical, I'll start it but not finish. And so we had another blow up, and I finally left. But in that time, I didn't see that ability to choose. I was wishing he would die. Like that's how bad it got. And I kind of horrified at that, but when you don't feel you have a choice,
Right.
that's what happens. And so I finally left and started to get independent. He came over one time to help me with something, was still trying to control me. And I said, we can't have any relationship at all. This is just not going to work. You're still trying to control me. So, and during that time, I really shut down. With the Enneagram work, we know that when we're under stress, we move to different things. And I went to that three achiever. I was wearing the Italian high heels. I was in the suits. I was working out 3 hours a day. I really had an eating disorder, but it was all about the control. And like it wasn't me, it was this mask
Yeah.
that I couldn't let people see that I was so
Yeah.
painfully feeling alone and desperate inside. So I did that for a few years. And then once we separated and I started to build my life again, I was hit with cancer. And so again, that intuitive part was coming up 6 months before I was diagnosed with the breast cancer. It was something big in your life is going to change. Something would
Mhm.
happen, and it's like, nope, that's not it. And it was interesting talking about breath. I was over at a retreat center called Hollyhock in this beautiful Cortez Island, and we were doing holotropic breath work. And I had amazing experiences, and people were jealous because it was my first time. People had been coming for 5 years and hadn't had the same experience as I had. But I just really got in touch with so much of the deep parts of me I had been pushing down, and this kind of started, it was kind of the catalyst to start that process to really go deeper. And so I was diagnosed with the cancer, spent 6 months on my sofa, just going deep with quiet, not listening to music or anything. It was just, I let the Pandora's box of emotions come
Yeah.
up and looking at all that pain and just really going deep. And when I started to come back to work, I didn't know how I could be around all these stressed out people because it was a large organization. We did a very stressful job. It was kind of quasi-judicial. So we were making big decisions and impacting lives. And I couldn't remember how to do my job. Like, this is the thing with the brain, right? It had shut down to protect me, to deal with the healing. And I couldn't remember my job. And I thought, what am I going to do? Luckily, it
Mhm.
did come back. It took time. And, I worked in an organization that was helpful in giving me alternate work so I could work my way back. But that's how I found the meditation and energy healing was I felt so vulnerable and open. I'd gotten so deep. I just felt so sensitive. And I went to a wine, cheese, and tarot card reading party and met a woman who said, I took a course where you get energy shields. And I said, I'm in.
Uh-huh.
And I
Yeah.
was in the next week. And so I've been doing that work for 25 years.
Yeah.
And just gradually things started to change. And the story that you were talking about, I had been doing union work and people really respected me on both sides because I did bring that kind of let's work together attitude.
Hmm.
And they wanted me to run for union president because there hadn't been a woman president yet. And I had lunch with this person and she said, are you going to run? And out of my mouth came, no, I'm going to be a healer. And basically, I looked around the room like, who said that?
Who said that? Yeah.
Like, did that come from me?
Yeah.
And so I started to gradually change. And the funny part is, the woman I had lunch with, she did become the union president for many years before she retired.
Mm. Oh gosh, there is so much profundity in that story because I know that there are women that are listening to this that hear their story in that, not from the exact same circumstances, but all of the feelings that you just shared of this idea that we don't have a choice, that we're in these relationships that we would rather not have. And I know that there's somebody that's listening to this is having a thought that I wish this person wasn't in my life for whatever way that has to happen. And I have a phrase that I use: pain pushes until vision pulls. So, what I want to pull out of that story is no matter where anybody is at this point, and I assume you'll probably verify what I'm about to say, is that no matter where you are, everything has been in service to bring you to a point where you can now make a choice. And if you want to wait a little longer, you can do that as well. The choice will always be there. That door will always be there waiting for you to walk through. And the biggest bit of information that you shared was you slowed down, you connected with your breath, and you listened to your intuition. Because we do not allow ourselves. We'll put those masks on, we'll do the hustle game, we'll do everything to outrun ourselves. When the reality is, if we just stop and listen to ourselves, and the part I love about your story, and the first time you told me, was you had that knowingness when you were little. We all have it. And we may not even remember it at this point.
Mhm.
If we slow down enough, we will begin to get glimpses of it again, I believe. And yet we do all have it. We all have it. It's just how do we allow ourselves to reconnect with it? I think your story is just absolutely so beautiful and so stunning. And everything that your website, I'll share, and your social media on the show notes. But I really want to ask you, what do you think for you? Drop into your own intuition. What is the one quality that you have always had? Because this is your quality, this isn't everybody's. What is the one quality that has always been in you that has allowed you to maintain this resilience no matter what?
There was a part of me that knew, and I'm getting emotional,
Yeah.
that connection to spirit that I cut off
Mhm.
because I almost died a couple times.
Yeah.
And I was four, 4 or 5. My dad pointed a gun at me
Mm.
and said, I wonder what it'd be like to shoot you. And when I reconnected to my spirit after, through the cancer experience, I went to that experience and saw
Mhm.
how I had cut myself off from source. I like to use a kind of non-denominational
Yeah.
energy
Mhm.
open because
Mhm.
even in my own family, religion did so much damage. Um, so it was always there
Yeah.
supporting me. And
Mhm.
so that gave me the courage and I'm just going to put one foot in front of the other. And what's interesting is the 6 in the Enneagram. That's what we're good at, is helping you,
Mm.
not the big step, because that's where we get stuck in the mental machinations. I need to know it
Right.
all, but it's like, what is that next step? And that's the thing that I took each time. It was, okay, I'm in this bad situation. What's the next step? Like even in the marriage, it was like learning about myself. I know that, this is the result of my past. What am I going to do about it? I have a choice here. Start to learn about myself, build that strength within myself emotionally that hasn't been there, that just went along to feel safe.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the essence. I really believe that 2026 is the year of that spiritual awakening. That's a simple way to put this energy that we are all spiritual beings having this human experience.
Mhm.
And that spirituality is not a religious thing, and you just so eloquently put that. It's that connection to the oneness of who we are. And what a beautiful way to wrap this up, that is your connection, and that will allow us to go through anything. It's not fair for a 4-year-old or a 5-year-old to have a gun put to their head. Absolutely not. And there are women that are listening to this have had horrific experiences in their life. And it doesn't mean that you can't come to this place where I see this, like this is making me cry, where I see this beautiful woman named Robyn sitting in front of me that has gone through so many things. And yet you are now this beautiful, centered, owning her own self, knowing who she is, woman, helping other people, women, especially in this world. What a beautiful place to be. And it didn't come from you having this idyllic childhood. It didn't. You had to go through those things, sadly, maybe, because there is no accident. So I think it's so beautiful. I am so blessed that I have you sitting in front of me. So now I'm going to ask you, well, I have two questions. I know you do numerology. I wonder if you've done numerology around the year of 2026, if you have any guidance about what we're about to see. I have my own version of that, but I think it's beautiful.
Yeah, and it is a 1 year. So we were
Yeah, exactly.
ending a
Woo, a
9 year
1 year.
cycle. So, that feeds into what you're talking about. So, one is about putting ourselves first and that
Yeah.
self-leadership. So
Mhm.
the more that you can do to learn about yourself and bring in that self-leadership, that's going to be really important this year. And we all have a personal year as well.
Yeah.
So we take our birth year and month and then the one for the year.
Mhm.
Like I'm moving into a 4, which is around stability. So building some of the more frameworks around my business, for example, and some structure. I
Mhm.
just finishing up a 3 year, which is around creativity, and I was writing more. I was, writing new signature talks. So there was a lot of that creativity. I have a chapter in a book to write to finish up. So these personal energies, but that lens of the world you'll feel too. Like even with
Yeah.
the 9 year, it was like cleaning up. It was my
Yes.
focus all the time. Like, what can I get rid of? Right. So one is the stepping up. And so
Yeah.
watching because especially you have two in your chart, the two is kind of the relationship stepping back sometimes. So there can be that kind of push pull with the stepping up and stepping back. And so I like to say like some of the work I've done with the Enneagram with people when they're the two, the helper, sometimes they're the supporter rather than putting themselves out there in that more leadership. You can do it in your way. This is what's so important is to do it your way. So that leadership doesn't have to be big out in the world. It can be in your community, in your home, and in your personal relationships where you're just taking responsibility for what's important to you so that we can see the codependence and all these things that we do for what they are and make that choice differently. So the more you can do to support yourself and understanding who you are and really bring yourself first. And, that's what we
Yes.
talk about with the meditation course, self
Yep.
first, like the oxygen mask.
Yep.
We
Yep.
can't fuel anyone else when we're empty. So how can you really shore that up for yourself?
Yeah. Again, it's the simple things that we just brush aside, right? The mask and the airplane metaphor. It just cracks me up. So all of your website and your socials will be on the show notes. So please go visit her website, take any of these fun assessments that she has, reach out because I know that you have brilliance and warmth and love to give to these women. So my last question is I want you to imagine that you're at the end of your life, that your future self is out there talking to you right now, and she is giving a message that will be delivered back then, but you're bringing it forward right now because literally these women on the planet right now need to hear it. And I don't know what it is. So I want you to just drop into that because you're going to be an even wiser woman at that point. So tap into your future self and let her give you whatever guidance, whatever wisdom that would be so beautiful and relevant to the women of today that they will be able to take from this podcast.
How can you be kind to yourself? How can you bring that if you have a challenge with that? Think about if you're into animals, like a small animal, or be in nature, um, because all the beauty of the world helps us to remember kindness. And when we can start with ourselves, it shifts everything. I know a lot of people talk about compassion, but for me, it's kindness because it's a step
Mhm.
towards that. Compassion can be more challenging, but kindness, we know what that is when we can. I'm just not going to do that for myself anymore. I'm going to
Mhm.
choose to stay home instead of pushing myself to go out there to that event that I don't really want to go to or whatever it is, right? It can be the simplest thing. Just,
Yeah.
yeah, just turning off the TV and spending
Mhm.
some time with yourself.
Wow. That's amazing. Just be kind to yourself. Brilliant. And anybody can do that. That's so brilliant is the simple things, all of us can do them. And once again, bringing this full circle, it's a choice. What choice will you make today? So I'm glad I made the choice to have you on as the first guest podcast of 2026. I'm so excited. And thank you so much, Robyn, for sharing with us today.
Thank you for having me.